Hello and welcome to another one of my flight reviews. Tonight, somehow unexpectedly, I find myself flying across the great Australian continent coast to coast, 4 hours in air from Melbourne to Perth on the flag carrier of Australia for the cost of just $99. Yes, you heard it, a somewhat seemingly impossible prospect. When flying domestically in Australia between the big cities, regardless of carrier, you typically might expect to fly on a narrow-body jet aircraft, but did you know Qantas are the sole operator of wide-body Airbus A330 services on select routes in Australia, especially on coast-to-coast flights between Perth and the East Coast. With these aircraft typically configured to fly to medium-haul international destinations in Asia, begs the question whether the A330 can actually elevate the domestic flying experience and to some extent bring an international style of travel to a domestic flight. So without further ado, come join me as I shed the real story behind how I ended up on the best value flight in my life, and whether the A330 really elevates the domestic flying experience for Qantas in 2024. Hello, good evening and welcome to the beautiful, modern, vibrant metropolis of Melbourne, capital of Victoria, Australia. According to some statistics, it's now officially Australia's most populated city, that being neck and neck with Sydney. In either case, both cities have populations well over 5 million people. Anyway, it's going to be a very exciting evening tonight. We're going to be flying across the great Australian continent all the way back to the west coast, my home base of Perth in West Australia. And quite unexpectedly, we're ending up going to be flying on Qantas tonight on an Airbus A330. Was totally not expecting to be flying on Qantas, but long story short, I'd actually booked to fly on a Rex tonight on their 737 service. It's a fairly new service they launched only a few weeks back between Melbourne and Perth. Got this ridiculous $99 sale fare. Actually took advantage of this also on a recent trip to Adelaide as well. So yeah, I was really keen to check out what Rex economy class was like coast to coast. Even had a business class, a bid upgrade in with them as well, which I was fairly confident I was actually going to get for maybe about $150. But yeah, unfortunately, only a few days ago, quite sad events happened at Rex. Very sad moment for the Australian aviation scene. Rex didn't exactly collapse overnight, essentially like Bonza did, but what happened was they actually entered voluntary administration. These reports had emerged that Rex were doing really quite poorly financially. They've been operating their regional flights for probably over 20 years now with the Saab 340s. Apparently they've always been quite profitable, but apparently since they got into the intercapital city jet market, acquiring those 737s just over 3 years ago now, apparently they've been actually losing quite a lot of money operating these flights. Some reports said they were losing over $1 million a year. So they went into voluntary administration. They asked the guys at Ernst & Young, who are taking over control of the company's finances. They're running the ruler over the budget per se. Obviously they've found the 737 flights are the cause of the issue. So what this meant, early last week, basically Rex entered a trading halt. They didn't want investors to kind of pull all the money out of the company, I guess, and for it to literally collapse overnight. So all of a sudden, very quickly after the trading halt, they ceased selling any more flights with the 737s. Then only a couple of hours later, it was officially announced that the 737 services were grounded. Because they entered voluntary administration, the administrators advised that they couldn't offer refunds at this point because they didn't have the cash flow. But they did announce that they had struck an agreement with Virgin Australia, who were going to rebook all the passengers on comparable flights at comparable times. So yeah, I went ahead with that. It was over 48 hours before, so they just advised you needed to fill in this online form, which I did. But yeah, the next morning, Qantas and Jetstar came on board as well, saying they were happy to help out customers. So given this situation, considering I hadn't had a confirmed flight with Virgin yet, well, I may as well try my luck with Qantas because you do get a little bit more all-inclusive service offering on Qantas. So I rang up the call centre. Very surprisingly, I literally got through straight away. It was only about a 10-minute wait or so, so I was really shocked about that. And yeah, I got this really friendly customer service agent. The lady was very apologetic about the whole situation, and yeah, she was really happy to help me out, rebook a flight for me pretty well on the same day, and yeah, she was even able to accommodate my preferred time and preferred flight. Found this flight at 8:10 on an Airbus A330, which is always a little bit better flying coast to coast than a narrow body in my opinion. So yeah, she booked me on this flight. It was retailing over $1,000 on its own. So really thrilled to get this flight. So yeah, then a few days later, Virgin actually came to the party as well. They sent out a confirmation email with an itinerary for me on the same evening, about 20 minutes earlier than the Qantas flight. So yeah, Virgin were very good as well. Didn't even have to ring them up or anything. They just sorted out and sent me a new flight. So yeah, very happy, very impressed with how both airlines have handled this situation. I'm not exactly sure if they're actually doing it from the good of their heart or they're getting some sort of financial kickbacks from the government to help out in this situation. But however it worked, it certainly worked for me nonetheless, so hard to complain. So in the end, after getting a $99 flight from Melbourne to Perth with Rex, I ended up with both a free flight on Virgin and a free flight on Qantas. So yeah, I know Virgin certainly helped me out in this situation as well, so definitely returned the favour, had the courtesy to get in contact, let them know I was already booked on Qantas and let them know that they could cancel the booking. So long story short, whatever way you want to look at it, I'm flying over to Perth tonight for just $99 on Qantas, or technically it was free if you consider I actually paid the $99 to Rex, not Qantas. But yeah, onto the flight itself, really looking forward to this one. So yeah, I have flown the Airbus A330-200 with Qantas before up to Singapore from Perth. Did do a review on that. Thought it was a pretty darn good experience overall, especially for the price I paid at the time. Also flown the A330s, both when Virgin Australia had them in the fleet, and also on Qantas before, many times coast to coast. Haven't actually flown it for quite some time now, and not since after the pandemic. Also be my first review on the channel with the A330 domestically in Australia, so really looking forward to it. Most people do generally consider the A330 to be a far superior experience than flying on a narrow body coast to coast. So without further ado, let's head back to the hotel. I'm going to grab my luggage, then we're going to walk about the 15-minute walk down to Melbourne's bustling Southern Cross railway station, get the Skybus out to Tullamarine Airport, we'll get checked in, and yeah, you'll come join me as we fly to Perth tonight. Should be a great experience, I hope. And just like that, folks, welcome to Melbourne Tullamarine International Airport. We're over at the Terminal 4 car park, up on the rooftop, as you can see, up on level 7. Absolutely amazing place here for plane spotting. Always love coming up here before the start of any flight. Amazing views of the apron there. You can see several of the runways in operation as well. So yeah, the Skybus today, despite getting the 5:30 service, it seemed to be really quick still. Didn't seem to be any issues with traffic. So got here by about 6 o'clock, so that was really good. So really great place for plane spotting up here on the top of the T4 car park. Started many flight reviews out of Melbourne from here in the past. Really great place, especially in the daytime for plane spotting when it's a lot easier to film. Anyway, we're flying out of Terminal 1 today, not Terminal 4, which you were originally supposed to be flying out of with Rex. So it's probably about a 10-minute walk or so over now. So let's head over to the airport terminal and get checked in, shall we? Where I'll finally see whether the proof is in the pudding that Qantas are indeed going to help me out, fly me back to Perth tonight. Before we head over to T1, let's have a look at the route information for our flight QF781 over to Perth tonight. It's a great circle distance of about 2,705 kilometres across the Great Australian Bight tonight. Because flight time is about 4 hours and 10 minutes, though we're going to do it in just 3 hours and 45 minutes. It's a little bit quicker than the narrow body service. Now as we walk over to Terminal 1, can't help but have a look at Terminal 4, most importantly where the Rex check-in counters are, where we were supposed to be checking in for what should have been a flight coast to coast with Rex tonight. Considering Rex's 737 flights only folded a couple days earlier, unsurprising, it's really sad state of affairs here at the T4 check-in for Rex. Only a couple days ago they had built up quite a decent network of flights up and down the east coast to cities such as Adelaide, Brisbane, Canberra, Hobart, Gold Coast, and even more recently this flight over to Perth. Now Rex are much more limited in their presence out of Melbourne, still operating SAR 340 flights, but these are just to small regional destinations. Onto Melbourne Tullamarine International Airport, comfortably sits in second place as the second busiest airport in the whole of Australia. Still quite a little bit behind Sydney Kingsford Smith International Airport, but in 2023 still to an impressive shy under 31 million yearly passengers. About 2/3 of these are domestic and about 1/3 were international. There's 4 terminals in total here in Melbourne, but thankfully and conveniently they all run continuously next to each other. Terminal 1 where we're entering now is for Qantas domestic flights, while T2 is for international, T3 is for Virgin Australia domestic, and T4 is for Rex and Jetstar. Check-in here for Qantas, as you would expect at a major capital city airport, is largely a self-service and automated affair. The slight annoying thing about the self-service kiosks here in Melbourne is that they don't really help to facilitate self-service check-in. Instead, they direct you to scan a QR code on your phone to check in via your phone if you haven't already. So really, they're just there to print off your bag tag. I really hope I'm not the only one who prefers an old-fashioned printed boarding pass. Really not a fan of this pushing people further and further into the digital ecosystem. Whilst I'm sure it works just fine for many people, what seems to be the complete deviation from conventional process just really shows you how vulnerable we are when things such as a CrowdStrike IT disruption actually occur. Anyway, onto self-service baggage drop. All very straightforward affair here in Melbourne. Scan your boarding pass, albeit it's probably going to be on your phone, and yeah, plonk your bag on the conveyor belt, confirm the usual aviation security prompts, and yeah, just like that, my bag's off to Perth. All very easy. Anyway, with check-in and baggage drop successfully completed for my free rebooked flight on Qantas tonight, time to head through security, which looks surprisingly quite quiet for about 6 o'clock on a Monday night. And just like that, folks, are all checked in, bags dropped, and through security, ready for our flight QF7812 to Perth tonight. So yeah, really easy check-in and bag drop here at Tullamarine Airport tonight. Only took a few seconds, all fully automated self-service affair here in Melbourne. Still get a little bit annoyed they don't print out physical boarding passes, and you've got to check in on your phone to use a kiosk to print your bag tag. Still a bit of needless double handling in my opinion. Apart from that, security was really quiet. Yeah, only a few minutes. Surprisingly quite easy here on a Monday night. Thought it'd be much busier. But yeah, still the old-fashioned scanners, so your laptops have got to come out. Anyway, we're departing from gate 23 now, so let's head over there and come to Perth. Should be good. As we walk over to the gate, can't help but notice everywhere I seem to be travelling around Australia at the moment seems to be a construction site, and Melbourne Airport is absolutely no different. When I flew in internationally on Emirates only the other night, it was a real mess over at arrivals and immigration, and yeah, it's no different here at Terminal 4 in Melbourne. So really not the greatest of experiences travelling through Melbourne Airport over the last couple of days. Terminal 4 really is quite quiet here on a Monday night. Lots of shops closed as well, so not overly that great for the travelling public. Then a couple nights earlier, flying internationally into Australia, arriving into Melbourne early on a Saturday night wasn't a great experience either. Took over an hour to get through immigration and customs. Much of the arrivals hall seemed to be under renovation. Staffing and resources seem to be really stretched. So not a great experience, but I guess the renovations are going to be done sooner or later for the better good of the travelling public. Anyway, on to tonight's aircraft taking us across to Perth. We're flying on an A330-200, registration Victor Hotel, Echo Bravo Bravo. 21.8 years of age at time of taking the flight. First delivered direct to Qantas back in December 2002. Briefly flew for Jetstar Airways in 2006 before coming back to Qantas in 2014. And just like that, we're ready to commence boarding for an on-time departure. Interesting, it seems that Qantas have this new group boarding process. For the A330-200 aircraft tonight, it's a 6-stage process. We was a little bit skeptical of how it worked, but to be honest, actually worked really well. Definitely some of the most efficient boarding for a reasonably large aircraft that I've ever seen. As I was seated towards the front of the economy cabin, I was actually in the last boarding group, which I think worked actually really well because I didn't have to spend too much time waiting on the plane. And just like that, welcome aboard the Qantas Airbus A330-200 aircraft. There's several variations of this aircraft for Qantas, We're on a domestic / internationally configured version. This particular version has 28 lie flat business class seats and 243 economy seats out the back in a 2-4-2 configuration. In terms of seating, the A330 is definitely a little bit more comfortable and spacious. You've got marginally better seat pitch as well, coming in at 31 inches, a seat width of 17.5 inches. At your seat, there's a fold back tray table which folds out and extends. You also got your in-flight literature, including the Inflight magazine. Interestingly enough, these seats I believe used to have in-flight entertainment systems built in. They took them out during the pandemic, unfortunately. These days you still get supplied an iPad which can be stowed in the seat with the holder right there. With this you also get 2 USB-A ports, one of which you'll want to use to keep the supplied iPad juiced up. On top of that, which I was really impressed, you get a blanket and you also get a pillow, so definitely international style amenities there.
To my magic place, Litchfield National Park, just outside of Darwin. We all have a place that fills our heart and makes us feel safe.
Wherever you're flying to today, and for whatever reason, we hope your trip is a safe one, and we hope you get to your magic place again really soon.
And just like that, we're now quickly taxiing out to the runway for our on-time departure, so what better time now to sit back, relax and enjoy our evening takeoff out of Melbourne. Then once firmly in the air, well and truly on our way to Perth, I will then go over what you can expect on board with the Qantas A330 experience. And just like that, after a very smooth takeoff, let's hear a little bit more about the flight ahead from our pilot, and then we'll go ahead and look at what you can expect on board with the A330.
We'd like to add our welcome to your board Qantas flight 781 to Perth. Running away to 38,000 feet, we'll be climbing up to 40,000 feet a little later on in the flight, and the conditions at both those levels are forecast to be fine. It's currently 6:31 p.m. Weather forecast for our arrival, light northerly breeze, scattered cloud, and a fairly cool 11 or 12 degrees Celsius. I'll talk to you again as we approach our descent into Perth with an update on their arrival details. In the meantime, I'll leave you in the capable hands of Michael and the crew. So please sit back now, enjoy the flight, and enjoy the Qantas in-flight service.
So first things first, before we get to tonight's meal service, let's have a look at the onboard entertainment with the A330. So first things first, you've got the in-flight magazine. Typical Qantas in-flight magazine. It's a pretty good read overall. Plenty of advertising in there, but there's some good articles to read as well. The Qantas magazine is also a good place to look for Qantas route and flight information. Also a good place to consult with to look at the in-flight entertainment options on board as well. Now on to the proper entertainment. So it is supplied on iPads here on the Qantas Airbus A330-200. I believe they did have IFE screens built in at some point in time, but I believe they were removed as cost-cutting measure during the pandemic. In terms of content available on the iPads, it's pretty similar to what you expect with the IFE screens built in on some aircraft, maybe slightly more limited, but yeah, good range of TV shows, movies, audio books as well. In terms of information, it's really just internal information about the aircraft itself. It doesn't actually have an in-flight moving map, unfortunately. Whilst it's probably not as good as having a built-in IFE screen, it's not a bad workaround nonetheless. This iPad system, you can mount it on the seat behind you, so yeah, it does give you the feeling of having an IFE screen anyway. Another good thing about the Qantas entertainment is that despite having the iPads, you still have access to the stream to your own device entertainment service as well. So you get much a similar selection of movies and TV shows to watch, but yeah, you can stream it to your own device if that suits you more. With the stream to your own device, you can also get a moving map as well. Unfortunately, you just can't get it through the iPad. To top it all off, this flight had complimentary free Wi-Fi for all passengers, just like most of the 737 and A330 fleet flying domestically in Australia. Fortunately, it wasn't the fastest of speeds today, and it was quite temperamental at times. Did manage to get a little bit of web browsing in, a little bit of messaging on WhatsApp. Unlike other flights, I didn't manage to stream any TV channels or anything like that, even though that is probably a little bit ambitious for in-flight Wi-Fi anyway. As I hadn't mentioned as well, you also do get complimentary headsets available to use for the entertainment on Qantas. You can pick one up when you're boarding the aircraft, but if you forget, don't stress. The crew do come around to offer more during the flight. And if you do need any inspiration on what to watch, you can just look at the Qantas Inflight magazine. Anyway, while we wait for hopefully the IFE to get back on track, I can demonstrate the seat has a reasonable level of recline and good adjustable headrests. Anyway, back to the IFE for the rest of the flight. Wasn't really a case that it wasn't working at all, but yeah, it did seem to be constantly buffering, just like if you're watching something at home with a very slow internet connection. So not ideal, but it is what it is. In terms of dinner, soon after takeoff, the crew come around and commence a dinner service for tonight's flight. I went for the beef noodles option, which I also recall having on a recent Qantas Link flight from Darwin to Perth. Thought it was really good then, and certainly enjoyed it again this time. Certainly hit the spot, very tasty indeed, even if it doesn't win any awards for presentation. Being an evening flight, there's a full drink service on offer as well to accompany your meals. So you can get soft drinks, you get tea, coffee, you get beers and wines as well. I asked for a white wine, which I got this Artan Sauvignon Blanc. I'm by no means really a wine drinker or a wine expert, but yeah, it's a nice, drinkable, zesty, sort of crisp, light wine in my opinion. Very drinkable indeed. Also got offered tea and coffee. Opted for a coffee, they give you 2 capsules of milk with it as well. So overall, a really solid meal tonight on Qantas. Do think they've really lifted their game in 2024 as opposed to immediately after the you-know-what. Aside from that, Qantas's IFE is really quite unreliable tonight, so I just resort to watching my own Amazon Prime videos downloaded for the rest of the flight. Also asked for a beer later on as well to give me a 150 Lashes Pale Ale. Not a bad drop either. So yeah, this is actually one flight I'm actually quite enjoying, flying back to Perth late at night. Usually quite an ordeal on a narrow body aircraft in economy. With the flight progressing so quickly and less than an hour to go, let's have a quick look at one of the lavatories on board the A330. I believe there's 6 in total, 1 at the front, 2 in the middle and 2 at the rear. So yeah, fairly basic lavatory here on the A330, but it's got everything you need, including a baby change table. All quite neat and tidy, especially considering it's nearly the end of the flight, so not bad at all. And just like that, and just over 3 hours since we departed from Melbourne earlier this evening, we're almost ready to start our descent into Perth. So what better time now to sit back, relax and enjoy our landing at night into the city of lights that is Perth. Then once on the ground, I'll then go over my final thoughts and feedback about the Qantas Airbus A330 experience and whether I do actually think it is a more superior way to fly across the country in 2024. now as we pull up to the gate here at Perth Airport's Terminal 3, and as we pass the very impressive Thomson Aerospace Vantage XL business class seats that Qantas have here on their domestic A330s, something I really want to review in the future, let me just reflect on how incredibly amazing tonight's flight was in the very unusual circumstances and just how much value I got for my $99. Whilst overall I can't complain about tonight's experience considering the circumstances and considering how much I paid in the end, it has come at the expense of Rex's downfall, which I think is a tragedy for the Australian travelling public. And of course not to forget the hundreds of workers, pilots, cabin crew and ancillary workers who have literally lost their jobs overnight. Can absolutely assure you, if given the choice, I'd still rather have flown on Rex tonight and experienced what my $99 would have got flying cross country with them. In the long run, it's not good for the Australian consumer, and airfare prices are going to continue soaring once again, I reckon. While sure, I do have to give credit where credit's due to how both Virgin and Qantas have handled this situation and accommodated passengers that were affected at such short notice. That was really good. Don't know what the official arrangements were behind the scenes, whether they were getting kickbacks or reimbursement from the government or anything like that, but it certainly worked for passengers, which was good to see. But this whole situation just reminds us how tough it is to compete with the big boys in the Australian jet aviation market. And when things go wrong, especially for airlines such as Rex and the now defunct Bunza, does raise questions as to which airlines are too big to fail for any government intervention. It's really a crazy thought to remember Virgin Australia actually also went into voluntary administration during the you-know-what and actually nearly collapsed as well. Whether that hypothetical situation would have halt Rex's business case to operate 737 flights, I'm not really sure. One thing that I am sure is that it would have been a very scary prospect if the Qantas Group had a near monopoly over the Australian aviation market. Imagine how much airfares would have been then. The whole irony of this situation was, despite Qantas accommodating me free of charge on this flight last minute, the cash fare for this flight was actually retailing at about 1,500 Australian dollars one way in economy, which is absolutely absurd in my opinion. But anyway, the situation is what it is. I somehow ended up on this flight after only paying $99 for Rex, and to top it all off, I even got 1,450 Qantas points and 20 status credits, which was something I certainly wasn't expecting considering the circumstances behind this flight booking. But more than happy to take it as the icing of the cake of what was a rather amazing flight in response to an unfortunate situation with Rex. Overall, really great experience tonight on the Qantas Airbus A330 over from Melbourne. Considering how I really didn't actually pay anything for this flight, apart from the initial $99 that I paid for on Rex. Really can't fault Qantas at all. Really appreciated them helping me out when Rex became insolvent with their 737s on the route. So yeah, really great flight tonight, really smooth flight as well, absolutely no turbulence. Really enjoyed it. The food was good, the beverages was good. The in-flight entertainment was the only slight hiccup with the flight. It wasn't a case that it wasn't completely working. It seemed to be quite intermittent. It seemed to be buffering quite a lot. The pilot did say they were going to reset the system, but yeah, it didn't really seem to fix it in the end. The Wi-Fi did work, although it didn't work as good as on other Qantas flights I've been, but yeah, it was perfectly fine for general sort of internet browsing and messaging. But yeah, in my opinion, definitely the Airbus A330 is definitely the best way to cross the country coast to coast in Australia. Qantas is the only airline that offer the wide body these days coast to coast in Australia. Absolutely recommend you take this flight if you've got the opportunity to take it over a narrow body. Definitely get a little bit extra better standard of seating as well, a little bit more leg room, a few more international style amenities as well. So yeah, in wrapping up this flight tonight, really can't complain considering Qantas rebooked me on the flight for free, and considering I only really paid $99 to fly Rex in the first place and somehow ended up on a Qantas A330, certainly can't complain at all. So that pretty well brings a wrap to tonight's flight review on the Qantas Airbus A330-200 over from Melbourne. Really great experience, really hope you've enjoyed it as well. If you have enjoyed it, really appreciate it. Do give it a like, leave your comments down below. And most importantly, don't forget to share it amongst your family and friends. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel or you are a fan of my videos, watching them quite frequently, really appreciate the support. But if you are new to my channel and you do enjoy my content, whatever brings you to the channel, flight reviews, walking tours, aviation content, driving tours, hikes, whatever it may be, do consider subscribing to the channel. Click that bell and notification button on so you won't miss the next flight review. Plenty of interesting stuff from this recent trip up to Singapore and also over to Melbourne. In the meantime, you also visit my website aussiejetsetter.com.au for latest flight reviews, industry news, destination guides, frequent flyer hacks and more. Maybe even check out my dedicated Discord server for fans and community of the channel to discuss all things aviation and travel. Obviously check out my Instagram page as well, Aussie JetSetter Shorts channel. Catch up with what I'm doing around the world in real time, all that sort of short form content. But from here at Perth Airport's Terminal 3 and Terminal 4, thanks so much for watching tonight's very enjoyable Qantas flight review. And until next time, safe travels, wherever that might take you.